Let's be honest, most salespeople pitch the wrong way. At the end of the pitch, the prospect's either confused, bored, or just not interested to buy. The truth is, pitching is not random. There is a clear structure that if you follow this, you control the authority, the deal keeps going through the pipeline, and you increase your percentage to close by a dramatic amount. Now, when you follow this correct structure, you can close with confidence because you know you delivered the most value and delivered your big idea in the best way possible, that buyer is going to have a higher chance to come on board, and that is fantastic. But unfortunately, if you don't do this, you're going to be sitting there twisting your thumbs, chasing this lead, and being another B-player salesperson. Now, in the next 7 videos, and in this video as well, I'm going to highlight the 7 steps that you need to follow in the pitch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give an overview in this video, and then over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be dropping these videos once a week on all these stages to give a really big insight, probably a 20 or 30 minute video in each one. And once you do this and follow this, learn it, re-listen to these videos, this is how you're going to elevate your business, your personal sales ability, and start making millions of sales. So by the end of this video, you're gonna have a high value overview of how to structure your pitches correctly. So we're gonna get straight into part 1. Okay, so this is how we have to start the meeting. We have to have the upfront contract. This is so important. This is like skipping a movie or the start of the movie and then just going straight to the middle part. It doesn't work. People are gonna get confused, okay? Now, very important as well, with every encounter that you do in life, or even when you're pitching like I'm talking about now, you have to have the control. And that person that owns the meeting owns the control. And this is called frame control. Now, when you start the meeting and you let that meeting just spiral into random processes, they start asking random questions, you're jumping in between, you don't have the control, okay? So this is where you're having to dictate and establish the rules of the meeting. And you're simply just by stating how the meeting is gonna go, what you're gonna be talking about, when you're gonna be asking them questions, and then if they're a good fit for you, okay? And like I said, this is like a movie that you're looking at. You have to be structuring and telling them exactly what they're gonna get into. And this drops their guard as well. No one likes to be sold to. So if you go in straight away talking about everything, which is what most salespeople do, then unfortunately, what happens is that they get their guard up, and when they're going to be explaining some of their stuff, they're not really giving you the information. And then when you go into pitch mode per se, then unfortunately they're zoned out and you hit it cold cognition, okay? Now, what you're also doing in this section is you're getting a verbal agreement from the prospect that this is how the meeting is gonna go. And what we're gonna do on the long video is break this down completely, give you exact scripts of what you need to say and how to say it. And by the end, they've given you the verbal agreement that yes, they accept the rules of this meeting, and you can always bring them back to this. If they start randomly asking questions, asking price, and throw you off course, just bring them back to, hey, we'll go through that at this point. We're just on this point right now, like we discussed at the start. Is that all good? Perfect. And that massively helps you. And once you've nailed this, you'll be surprised at how amazing this sets the scene. You can see the person sit back into their chair and await orders basically. And that puts you into the alpha spot. Like I said, you never want to be a beta trying to sell to an alpha because it won't work, okay? You always need to be the alpha in the meeting because that's how someone's gonna hand their credit card over. So now we're moving on to the fact find, and this is where you shut up and let the prospect speak. This is so important. Do not start talking about what you ate for lunch or all these other things. Find out their problems, okay? And this is what you're here to do. You're here to help them with the problem, and you can't help them with the problem that you don't know. So you need to start digging into the pains, the issues, why they're on this call, how long they've been feeling like this for, and what does success look like? Or if this problem was solved, what does that look like in the next 6 months? And really feel that pain. You want to dig it out of them, okay? And don't feel like you need to jump in at this point, okay? You're asking these questions and you're really just listening, actively listening on what it is. So you're building a kind of map picture of how you can actually help them. And that's the best part in here. Don't already think about how you can sell to them. Truly put into their mindset of how can I help their problem? How can I solve this? And that's what you need to really delve into, okay? Now, a really pro tip here, I'll go into why in the part series, but always have a pen and a paper to write down and jot some stuff down. In this day and age, we have a lot of the recordings like on the meetings, and that's fine for after, but in the moment, you wanna really note down really key things that you wanna ask, one follow-up question or two, key points that you want to dig into when you start going into the pitching side of it, okay? And what also does is it shows the prospect that you're actually listening. And I've been there. When someone says something, try not to be like, yeah, no, I totally get that. That's what a lot of our clients say when they come to us and then we do X, Y, Z. None of that, okay? don't worry, just sit there and just listen. Just ask probing questions to get more and get more and get more. And you want to then, once you get the information, start digging into that pain of what if this remains? What would happen if this didn't change? How much is it costing you an opportunity cost if it's not fixed? How much time is it taking, and how many more employees? How much would that cost? All these type of things, depending on what you're selling, are really important, because when you come to the big idea, if you solve that, you can refer back to what they said, and that is huge for your offering, okay? So, like I said, don't speak, don't pitch, don't go off into story modes, because you're gonna put all of this into the next part, which you're gonna put their pains into the story mode, which is when you start building the desire, the ambition. So part 3 is the story and the big idea. People don't buy data, they buy a story, okay? And now that we have their pain, we can dive into the vision of what life looks like after they can remove this pain. But before we go into that, we need to tell them how we got here, how the business is solving this problem. What pain did they go through? What pain is everyone else going through? What have we realized that once solved, we get the XYZ and all this beautiful vision over here. And that's without telling them how they do it. We're just showing them the pain, we're talking about the pain, and then we're showing them the outcome. Because that's the two things that people care about in a pitch. They have a pain and they want the outcome. And how we do it is what we need to explain. That's the product, okay? So you're not talking features, you're talking about the narrative of how they're gonna get there. And what you're trying to do is, this is exactly what we need, or this is exactly where we wanna be. Because now, what you've done is they're listening. They're like, oh wow, this is interesting. I've got this problem and this person's over here. How are they doing it? So when you're telling them about the features and benefits, what you've done is you've stimulated in their brain, and I talk about the hot cognition a lot, you've stimulated things that are excitable to them. Data puts them straight into cold cognition where they're just trying to focus. They're wanting to know more. You're leaving them on a cliffhanger. And what that does is, think about a movie again, and I always refer back to movies because it's so perfect to explain a pitch, is that if you end a episode on a cliffhanger, what happens normally? There's a reason why Netflix ends on a really good series and it automatically plays. It's because they want your attention. They keep you in the flow. That's exactly what we're doing in this part, okay? We're building that narrative up, and they're like, I need to listen. What is this product? How are we gonna get there? And we move on to that in the next section. So part 4 is the intrigue. So we've just gone through the story and the big idea, how the business got here, what made them do it, and the outcome that happened with the business. Now we're shifting across to the story. So this could be, for example, a service business that created a product for themselves because they had no time management. And what they now needed to do was help other businesses get their time management back, and they created XYZ product. And again, what we're doing is we're not talking about the big idea in this. We're giving really big overview statements of, and now we're doing XYZ, blah, 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 to help these businesses. And this is where you can talk about the testimonials, the credibilities, not going into it too much, but starting to talk about how you've helped 100 companies gain back 100 hours per day, or not per day, but per month, per week, whatever. And this again is putting them on that, you're basically pushing them closer to that cliffhanger where they want to start to then jump off or jump and grab the product, okay, without giving them what the hell this is. And if you think about the psychology of this, before you even talked about their product, they're already wanting it. So what happens is this allows us not to have to dive into all the technical weedy things, because that can be for the next call or that can be for the proposal to really dive into that stuff. We're building the emotional connection so that they need this. And this is why we break these into 2 sections, because the story captivates them. They now see how this company got here. And then now we're diving into a little bit more of the problems and the intrigue, even further from what we did on in the story where we've connected it to the business. And now we're kind of making it a little bit more personal about all the other people that have gone through this problem. And then what we're then doing is closing it off and starting to go into the big idea. And we can connect the dots here by saying how we've helped other companies that have done XYZ problem that they've talked about come into XYZ, whatever we're doing. And what this has done is through this big idea, solved it. And that's when we come on to the actual product. So this could be 15 minutes or 10 minutes of not even talking about what the product is before we even get there. And this is crucial. All right, part 5. So this is the product and service breakdown. Now this is when you are going to reveal the big idea, how you do this. Now, the real critical thing here, okay, is not to get stuck into all of the features. It's to smash through the features that they care about and what they've talked about. So some products, and I know this well when I was pitching, can have 20, 30, 40 features. And the issue is how do you demonstrate all of them? You can't, you have to give overviews, but you know what's causing the problems because you fact found them. You went through in the first start of the pitch. And what that allows you to do is dive into that. So you can refer back to them, which shows that you were listening and that you've got their attention, because people like to know that you're listening and they want to be personalized. You go back and say, I remember when you said this X problem, this is how we solve it, and you can demo it. And then you can go back and say, you mentioned this, and what we do is we do this to solve that problem. And then you go through all the other things that they may not know, which is again, your secret sauce. So you're breaking this down. Now the key here is not to get stuck too analytical. You can't go too deep into the data, okay? The data needs to kind of come after in kind of more of the product demo, because this is a story and movie. We don't want to start going through graphs and all this kind of stuff. It really kills them. So when we're going through this pitch, keep it simple, keep it clear, and like I said, keep it personalized, because personalization will give you a 10 times better result rather than just explaining a product. I fall asleep sometimes on products, honestly. Obviously that's an exaggeration, but there's some people that it's so just not interesting, and you can't do that. You have to feel like you are an actor presenting the best pitch ever that's gonna get you an Emmy or an Oscar or whatever actors get. There can't be any weak language like we may or we can, it's we will. They want to feel like you're so confident that you will solve this problem. And obviously you need to be confident, and you should be confident in your product. Now by now, they should be thinking this is exactly what they need to solve that problem. And this is where we're going to start tying them into the actual value proposition. This is the pricing and actually what you do, breaking it down step by step in order to get to the close. So part 6, the value proposition. Now, the price does not lose deals, a lack of value does. So in the value proposition, plain and simple, this is what you're doing. You are bridging the gap between the price of their pain with the price of your value and your offer. So if their problem is costing them £100,000 a year and your product costs $20,000 a year, the math sells itself. So you want to anchor the outcomes, not the price. It is an investment, it's not a cost to them. And you have to deliver the price with certainty, no flinching, no hesitation. This is going to change their life, or it's going to save them 80 grand. When value is clear, price is irrelevant. And then the next step is to be closing the deal or locking in the next steps. So part 7 is closing the meeting. Now, people think closing is all about trying to persuade someone or sell someone that they have to say yes, where in fact, you actually want them to get the no. You want resistance, because then you know your price right. If something's selling too easy, it means your price is wrong. Now, this is crucial, okay? Not everyone will close on the first deal. In some cases, it's actually better to not close them on the first one, because you're going to try to push them into something that they're probably not in a position to make a decision on. Now, a lot of gurus out there and a lot of high ticket closers, they will push for a first call close, and that's fine. But when you're selling a service, when you're doing a product like this and pitching, it is sometimes hard, because there is going to be things that they haven't seen, or they're gonna have to send them a proposal, or they may have someone else that is technical not on the call because you're the decision maker and they want to validate these information. That is all fine, okay? And it's really hard to determine, but the key overview, and I'll dive into it in the part 7 series, is when you're doing B2C and you're selling something that is like a coaching or service, then yes, you can do a one-time close or one call close, and it's very important. When you're doing B2B, like agencies, services, stuff like this, you're going to need a second call. And basically what you're doing on that second call is it's the closing call. And you make that very clear at the end of this first call. And that has to be within 48 hours of the first call, okay? Because information is lost very quickly. After 48 hours, they start to lose 10% a day on what you talk to them about. And that's a problem, because you've got them so excited and high. We want to captivate that energy, okay? And again, you can close on the first call. It depends on what you sell. But from experience in doing over about $10 million in this, then I've always done a 2-call close. I have had people close on the first call, but it is a rarity, okay? And when it comes to closing, you're not actually asking for the yes. You're trying to always get a no. People feel comfortable saying a no. So rather than saying, are you ready to go forward today? But you're gonna get a potential yes, which is a fake yes, and that's the worst that you wanna get. What you wanna get is someone saying, like, asking this question, would you be opposed to going ahead today? And they're going to say, no, I'm not opposed to it, rather than saying, yes, I'm opposed. Now they may say yes, and that's fine, because that means there's an objection. But if someone says, no, I've got no objections, someone's more comfortable saying no and go ahead than yes. Very important. And here's the point, if you follow these 6 steps before this, then actually closing becomes much simpler and easier because you've followed the movie scenes throughout the whole movie and then you've watched the end and you understand it, okay? If you do it wrong and you start skipping through scenes, you're gonna end confused, not sure. And that's going to kill the ability for you to close that deal. And that's why it's so important to be going through that upfront contract, making sure that the meeting stays on track. It's then important to get the fact finding, asking questions about their actual pain in their business and what they need so that you can personalize it later. It's then so key to be telling the big story and the big idea of how this happened rather than just jumping straight into the product. Or even better, get them intrigued by talking about how you've done this with other people, going through the problems and going through the high value things that, again, not the weedy stuff, but gets them on that cliff edge. Then we're going into the product side of it, okay? We're diving into this, we're going through all the stuff that's gonna help them. Then we got that value proposition that's breaking down the exact offering, any guarantees, the breakdown, exactly what they're gonna get. And then finally, the price. And then that's getting us to the closing call. Again, if it's the first time, you can close them, or you send all this across, get that meeting booked in, and then you close. So this is the full overview of what I'm going to be doing a video on. I'm gonna do probably a 25 to 30 minute video on each of these points, really delving into the weeds, okay? Like high value on what you can do. This is the exact structure that I've used to sell millions upon millions of dollars of stuff, and it's worked. I think especially because it's like 10 to 20 grand, you know, a 30 to 50% close rate, and even other people that I've trained this on, they've got a 30 to 50% close rate. And we're talking high value. We're not talking about £100 a month product or £1,000 a month. We're talking something around the lines of 6 to 10 grand to even 20 grand with revenue share models in there as well. So, you know, something that's it's a big ask for someone, and this works like a treat. You know, this is so powerful, okay? And so many people don't pitch right. I probably have only been pitched a handful of times correctly when I've tried to buy products, but normally the product good. But I think about all the other people that don't or are unable to make decisions as quick as I am, how much that's gonna struggle them and how much more money they're leaving on the table. So I cannot wait to break this down even further. It's going to be amazing. It's gonna help you make a lot of money and obviously help you not feel like a lost dog on a call and close the deals.